This is Greg Pass with the Americans in Wartime Experience. Today's date is June the 3rd, 2022, and we're in Reading, Pennsylvania, World War II weekend. I got the privilege today to be talking to Frank Sinatra / Frank Cubillo. And I'm saying that right. Fish.
You said it.
What's your full name, Frank?
My full real name, but I hardly ever go by, it's Francis Xavier Cubillo, but I go by Frank Cubillo. And my stage name is Frank Sings Frank. And
So,
we'll talk about that a little bit later, I guess. Yeah.
For the people that are not aware, Frank is kind of a legend at these events. We see him at World War II weekend every year, and in Virginia Beach at Warbirds Over the Beach. And Frank just happens to be doing a show right near our RV. Came up to us, talked to us this morning, and turns out he's a U.S. military veteran, which brings me into the next question. So what branch of service were you in, and what wartime operation did you participate during your long career?
Okay, well, I was in the United States Marine Corps, very proud of that. I served for almost 38 years active duty, just a few months shy of 38 years active duty, which is very unusual. Most people do 20 years or 30 years, and certainly 38 years is a lot different. So I went through the ranks from private all the way up to colonel, through staff sergeant, through warrant officer rank, and then what they call limited duty officer, LDO, and then the Navy and the Marine Corps has that. And then I got a regular unrestricted commission, and I went all the way up to colonel.
Fascinating.
So
let's back up. When did you enlist? How old were you, and what was your motivation to
I was a college dropout. It's kind of a little story, a little vignette. I went to a Catholic all-boys Army ROTC military school on Long Island in New York, called LaSalle Military Academy. Very proud of that school. And I had hoped to get a nomination to the Air Force, Navy, or Navy, Air Force, and Army military schools, West Point, Annapolis, and Air Force. But I didn't have high enough scores on the tests, on the SATs. So I was put on the waiting list for all three service academies. Ended up going to St. John's University in New York, and college life wasn't for me. It just wasn't. I needed to have that discipline. I was very undisciplined, and so I had flunking grades for my first semester. And I told my dad and mom, I said, you know what, I'm going to enlist in the Marines. They almost had a heart attack, because it was during the Vietnam era. It was 1971,
Gotcha.
And I came in January of 72. So, and I enlisted, and I think, Greg, that was the best thing I ever did, because I needed to be back in the military, and I just flourished in the military.
And how old were you at this point?
I was 18 years old, and I went to Parris Island boot camp in South Carolina. I graduated top in my class. My platoon, I was an honor man. I got promoted to PFC, private first class, right away. And I just rose through the ranks, and I got very lucky to be in a very unusual MOS, military occupational specialty, called signals intelligence. And I had no idea what that was. And that's intercepting signals and gleaning intelligence from it. That's what I did. It's very interesting, very technical. I went to school in Pensacola, Florida for that with the Navy, and then I was sent out to do that work in places like Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and also Japan. It was my first overseas assignment. So I made it all the way up to the rank of Staff Sergeant E6 in the Marine Corps. I applied for warrant officer and was selected in 1979 as a warrant officer in the signals intelligence field, and rose through the ranks there to CW03, Chief Warrant Officer 3, at which time I applied for a program in the Marine Corps and the Navy called Limited Duty Officer, LDO. And that is a focused, you stay in you become a lieutenant, and you stay in your field, your OC field. You don't cross over or do anything else. You just pretty much stay.
Is
it's
that
kind
exclusive to warrant?
Yes, and that's the only way you can make LDO in the Marine Corps is through the warrant officer ranks too. So it's a little bit different than the Army in that respect. And the Air Force doesn't have warrant officers, and the Navy does. Navy and Marine Corps and Army still have warrant officers. So it's a really good program. And then they asked me to go unrestricted status, and I became a unrestricted line officer in the Marine Corps as a captain. I was a captain for 8 years. That's a long time. I didn't mind. I loved being a captain. I commanded at all levels, platoon level, company level, and I went to a schoolhouse in Virginia Beach where they teach signals intelligence and intelligence. I was a major at the time, promoted to lieutenant colonel, screened for command. I went to Okinawa and commanded an intelligence battalion in Okinawa as a lieutenant colonel. Got selected for top level school. They sent me to the Navy War College in Newport, Rhode Island, and I got my master's degree there. And then while I was there, I was selected for colonel at the War College. And at that point in time, I had 30 years. And I told my wife, because she was really excited about me getting out at 30. And I said, they just selected me for colonel, so I'm going to stick around for more years. I had to do a joint assignment, and they sent me back to Norfolk to the U.S. Joint Forces Command there, and it was while I was there that I volunteered to go to Operation Iraqi Freedom. The war in Iraq was kicking off, and I really wanted to go because all those years prior, I had no opportunity. You said you were in Desert Storm, and when Desert Storm kicked off, it was only a 100-day war, basically, right? I was in command at the schoolhouse where I was training Marines, and I called up Washington and I said, "Hey, I want to go." They said, "No, you need to stay and train the Marines and send them out to the field." So I missed an opportunity to go, but this was an opportunity I wasn't going to miss. And at that time, I was a colonel.
What year would this have been?
Which one?
For your deployment?
Deployment, 2003. So when it kicked off. So I went, I was attached to the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force, 1 MEF, up at Camp Commando in Kuwait, northern Kuwait, right at the line. And then I was the Deputy Assistant Chief of Staff for Intelligence for 1 MEF. So I worked with another colonel who was the G2. I was the G2 Alpha, the deputy. And it was a big operation. You know, we had close to 92,000 people in the MEF. It swelled up, including a division from the British so it was a big operation to coordinate the intelligence for. And we had the Army, as you know, working with us in tandem too. So it was a great opportunity. So when the war kicked off, when the Marines and the Army made the advance towards Baghdad, and that historic run that they did, I was a part of that, making sure that we were getting support and also getting all the intelligence support to make that happen as well.
All right, so let's talk about intelligence. Obviously, there's a lot of work that goes in the front end of the actual ground war. That's something I'm assuming you were involved with in pretty good detail. So talk about your day-to-day activities before the war actually kicks off, preparing our troops for battle.
Yeah, well, when you have an operation as large as Operation Iraqi Freedom, there's most of the big challenge is all the coordination, because you have a lot of collection intelligence assets out there, all kinds, and I won't get into the details because a lot of it's classified, but on the ground intelligence, air intelligence, space intelligence from space, satellites and everything else too, and all of that needs to be coordinated in a coordination center. So we had this big coordination center. We had to have very dependable communications, satellite communications, secure satellite communications, and what have you. And that takes time to get all of that together and on the ground, so to speak, from all kinds of places. But so the ramp up, if you will, to the war was hectic. It was very hectic. And then once we got everything in place that we needed, the troops were ready to go, and the battle plans were being worked out by the operations guys. That's when we crossed the line of departure and moved into Iraq towards Baghdad, and I think history will prove that's one of the greatest operations, in addition to Desert Storm, Desert Shield, how we were able to move consecutively up and just battle after battle and take care of Saddam's army, which didn't prove to be very resistant to us. But we had a very good logistics trail, supply. It was brilliant, and I was just very proud to be a part of that.
How would you compare our intelligence capabilities back in 2003 with Iraq's? I mean, are they even comparable?
No, I would say they're second rate. At that time, our intelligence capability was top notch. I was very proud of that because we were able to coordinate with so many different entities. Now, mind you, we also had to coordinate with our second party partners, the British, and all the other countries that supported Operation Iraqi Freedom, the Australians, Germans, everybody who participated with us, we had to coordinate too. So it was a monumental task, but our country, and I'm very proud of our armed forces, we were up to the task for that.
So let's talk about when you first got in country. You flew into Kuwait?
We flew into Kuwait, and then I was
commercial or military?
Yeah, commercial. Was bussed up from there to Camp Commando, which is up on the northern tier, northern border, and there was a big camp that was built there. That was the headquarters for the first MEF. So you had a 3-star general, a 2-star deputy Marine in charge of that operation, and then lots and lots of camp layout. Tents, and we had to have showers put in there, and mess halls and weight rooms. Of course, Marines have to have weight rooms, right? To stay in shape and everything else too. And then the perimeter security and everything else too. It was pretty impressive how fast all that came into play. It really was.
First time in the region?
Yeah, for me in that region, absolutely.
What was your impression about geographically the weather?
Oh, I had to get used to the heat. It was very hot, and then the sand. We had some sandstorms and what have you. You probably had something when you were in Desert Storm, but the sandstorms were pretty nasty. We had to wear the goggles and the face coverings and what have you too. So, and just hunker down in the tents and what have you, and with this dust everywhere.
So that's my next question. What about living conditions? Where do they have you?
I was a colonel, so I had my own tent and a small CP tent, small tent for me, but it was perfect. And we had showers, so it really wasn't that bad. And we had a chow hall, so there was plenty of food. Food was plentiful, and they spared no expense to keep all of us, in good stead in terms of what we needed to survive. So it was good.
When the war kicks off, is your office physically moving as well, or you guys?
Okay, so I mentioned that I was the deputy. So the actual G2, the colonel who is the G2, I was the G2 Alpha. He went with the advanced group. So he followed in trace as the moving elements moved forward into Iraq, the fighting elements, the grunts, the division, the regimental teams that they had organized, combat teams, and then I followed in trace as with the deputy, with the 2-star. He was a pilot, so he would stick a helicopter and we'd go, and we would visit the British. We visited the British camp, and we talked to the generals there, do the coordinations that way too. So I was his intel officer basically, and the other colonel was the 3-star's intel officer, and we just did a boatload of coordination. Remember, I mentioned that at Camp Commando, where we had a baseline intelligence collection place that could provide support, coordination center that could provide support to those advancing units, and that's what made it really interesting. And so somebody had to oversee that, and that was mainly my job.
Gotcha. Did everything run pretty smooth?
I thought so. I was amazed at how quickly we were able to make advances without much. We didn't get bogged down like the Russians are bogged down in today. And anyway, but we were in short order. We were already in Baghdad with the army on our flank, and we just, both services, we just marched right up there, and then the statue came down. That very epic day we all remember.
How did it make you feel when you saw that?
That was great. It was wonderful, and I got to go with my general to Iraq, and we met with the 1st Marine Division commander, who was General Mattis. He was a 2-star at the time. And of course, later he became a 4-star, and but General Mattis showed us around Baghdad and talked about the operation and the success and how his troops did in with First Marine Division. So it was great. And then we went to see the British camp and whatnot, and the Brits are great. I love working with them. They have a wonderful attitude, and they like working with us too. So it was a really great experience. Yeah, long hours. Yeah, I don't want to think it was a cakewalk. I mean, everybody put in long hours, and then of course we always had that fear. We didn't know, especially early on, whether or not there was he was going to use chemical weapons or anything like that. So
were you guys in MOP?
Yep, you had to be in MOP going up, and that was pretty tough. And in the heat with MOP gear, for the audience, that's the covering, so you don't get infected by chemical or biological warfare. So yeah, pretty tough. And everywhere we went, we had gas masks everywhere. Even when you were out there PTing, you had your gas mask strapped. Yeah, everything. Because we just didn't know. And I remember laying at night when the war kicked off, Saddam would be shooting his Scud missiles, and Scuds are just unguided rockets going up there, and we had all the Patriot missiles arrayed so we can shoot anything down that was out there and that our radars could pick up. And I remember laying in Iraq at night and hearing the boom, boom in the distance. I'm going, yeah, Patriots. Knocking those missiles out of the sky before they could even get to our camp. Our camp did get hit one time by a low-flying missile. We think it was a surface-to-surface missile that was fired from the Al-Faw Peninsula, and it scurried up over our camp and landed about maybe a couple of thousand feet from the outer perimeter of the base, which leads us to believe that they tried to do GPS coordinates for our base, Camp Commando, but they were off, thank God, because that missile was a 2,000-pound warhead, and it made a big-ass boom, a big boom when it hit. And we were all in the tent in the middle of the base doing the final planning for the kickoff thing. So if that was an accurate missile and it hit, and the reason why it wasn't intercepted is because it was lying surface to surface. It was low flying, so the radar, it's arrayed to look high. It wasn't on it, so it just came up over the berm into our camp and thankfully missed the top. But we heard it loud and clear coming over our tent, like a jet sounded. And that was a scary moment, because once that boom hit, we were all at the table. We all hit the deck instinctively, put our gas masks on, and ran to the Scud bunkers. We all had to get in tight hit the Scud bunkers, and we had to wait for the all clear. And that was pretty intense, because we just didn't know. And what we didn't know, if it was a chemical weapon that he threw at us, so that's why we had to wait for the all clear. But we were all gas masked inside a tight bunker space, and it's 90 some odd degrees or 100 degrees, how hot it was in Kuwait and whatnot too. So it was great. It was challenging.
You mentioned you're in Baghdad, so you're a career guy. I assume you know a lot about military history. When you were standing in Baghdad, at the time, did you ever take into account how historically significant? Oh
yeah, I walked on the Tigris and Euphrates River. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, and we were there to see all the Saddam's legend. I guess he had. I can't even think of the city that he rebuilt basically from that time, but Babylon. He rebuilt the city of Babylon, I got a chance to walk through there too, so it was really amazing. But to be there, and you're right, this is where the cradle of civilization, the Tigris and the Euphrates River, we were there. And we had camps there and whatnot as we were marching through into Baghdad. So yeah, it was very significant. And that's one of my greatest memories of being in the Marine Corps, no doubt.
So you're married at the time?
I was married. My wife was a nervous wreck, because remember on the TV when the war kicked off, remember shock and awe, that term? And the news was just showing shock and awe and missiles and lots of stuff. And my wife and I couldn't communicate with her very well because of the restrictions and whatnot. Remember, I was an intel guy, so I wasn't able to tell her that I was okay occasionally, don't worry about me, I'm fine, that kind of thing. I was able to send some messages out that way.
How? Through emails?
Yeah,
or
email. We were restricted to use email at the time, especially when the war kicked off.
Mhm.
Everything was cut off. But there was phones. I remember people had ways to call. I forget the system. It's been a while. Been retired 13 years now. I got brain fog and a lot of that stuff too. But it was pretty tough for my wife because she just didn't know, and she was seeing stories about bombings and whatnot, and she had no way to know. So she was pretty. It was pretty tense for her for a while until afterwards when things settled down. I was able to contact her and she was okay there. But for a while there, it was pretty dicey, and I'm sure. That's a colonel's wife, but can you imagine a PFC's wife or a young enlisted man's wife? And it was tough. But things have gotten, I think, a lot better now. When we go into conflicts now, the way to communicate back to the families, either through group emails back to the units, so they can, with the ombudsman and all that. I think that's a much better process.
So
that was tough.
When did you get to Kuwait?
I got to Kuwait in January of 03.
And when did you get back to the U.S.?
I got back in June of 03.
June of 03?
Yeah, I wasn't there long. I mean, the operation ended fairly quickly. I think by May we were wrapped up. April and May. April was the offensive, I want to say, and by May it was wrapped up, and they didn't need me anymore because remember once we accomplished the mission, and Saddam was out of the picture and whatnot too. It was just cleanup, and they didn't need a heavy intel package. Maybe mistakenly we pulled out kind of fast, just my opinion. We didn't really have we pulled out maybe too fast because there was a vacuum created, and insurgencies came in and all that stuff too. So it made it pretty tough, but I think it was a very successful operation. You look at Operation Iraqi Freedom 1 and 2. They were very successful operations, I think. Something I'm very proud to have been a part of.
When did you retire?
I retired in October 1st of 2009. So like I said, 3 months short of 38 years active duty. My last assignment, I was in charge of all Marine Corps intelligence training. I was the commanding officer of Marine Corps intelligence schools, and that schoolhouse was in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and that's where we retired. I was my final resting place. My wife didn't want to travel anymore. We've been married for 45 years, but she was with me for most of those years, and we did a lot of overseas assignments, 17 moves, household moves. It was pretty tough on the family, my kids too. But my kids when we were stationed in Okinawa, they got to walk on the Great Wall of China. They got some wonderful cultural experiences that they would have never gotten if they'd stayed in the States. So.
All right, so you mentioned kids.
That too.
I'm going to ask you these are the good questions.
Okay.
So, as you know, obviously we're recording this. We're going to give you a copy of the video, and we'll give you some instructions on how to send your video to the Library of Congress for the Veterans History Project, where
Sure.
a lot of these videos, and theoretically they'll be retained for hundreds of years. So
Hopefully.
a couple hundred years from now, when your great grandkids might stumble upon the video and see it, what would you want them to know about your service to your country?
Well, that I really, really wanted to serve my country. I felt strong degree of patriotism and loyalty to America, and I wanted to give thanks. And I knew the importance of serving our country to preserve our freedoms, and that's why I went in. And I went in on a no guarantee contract. The Marine Corps could have done anything with me, needs of the Marine Corps, but they saw fit because of my education. I told you I went to a military school. They saw fit to put me in the intelligence field, signals intelligence field, and that was great. But I want them to remember that their grandpa or great-great-grandpa served a very long time. Most people don't serve as long as I did, but they just kept giving me great opportunities, and it was an honor and a privilege to serve. And I'm very, very special, for the Marine Corps. If you look at me, if you could open up my chest right now and look at my heart, there's a eagle, globe, and anchor Marine Corps symbol beating on And I always wear a ring. I don't know if you can see that ring there.
Yep.
That's the Eagle Globe and Anchor. My wife gave me this on my 30th anniversary in the Marine Corps, hoping that I would get out. And I always have something, a little something that reminds people that they're looking at a Marine. And did you want to talk about my what I'm doing now? We have time for that?
I'm gonna get into that in just a second.
Okay.
The one last question I have about the military is which kind of leads into the next question. You're still involved in some military stuff, which we're going to get into in a minute. So you have a lot of conversations, possibly with young kids.
Yes.
And
Yes.
talk about your military service. If you had a kid come up to you today, you say, hey, I like what you're doing. I heard about your career. I'm thinking about joining the Marine Corps. Irrelevant what military service. What advice would you give them on how to succeed in the military and the benefits that service?
Great question. Great question, because I do get that a lot. And I always tell young people, I said, it's a wonderful opportunity, especially if you have no idea what you want to do in life. And so many kids go right into college and they're not sure. They're not successful in college like me, because they weren't ready to settle down and really focus on what they wanted to do. The military gives you that opportunity, because there's so many things that they put in front of you that you might, hey, I might be good at that. I might like to try that. Might go for that. So it gives you some grounding as to where you may want to go, whether you serve 4 years or 38 years. I mean, it's fine. And here's the other thing: the military still provides, a great opportunity. I got all my college education from the Marine Corps, and I made enough money to put my wife through college, my kids through college, and so there's so much opportunity. And notice that I got to where I was because I took advantage of all those programs, the warrant officer program, the limited duty officer program, the command screening program. I just took advantage of all those things, and so it was an honor and a privilege to serve. But yet, if you go in, take advantage of the opportunities that the military offers you. There's so many of them, really, truly.
Well said.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so let's talk about something a little bit different. So why are you here today, and why have you been here for all these years? What do you do?
Okay, so and this is the fun part, when I was getting ready to retire, as time was getting ready, I went. In fact, when I was stationed in Hawaii for the first time, we used to go to operations in Korea, Thailand, Japan, places, and work with the Japanese, Korean, and Thai military. And when we had, after the operation was over, the exercises, we would go out in town with the uppity-ups, the generals and the colonels and what have you. Well, my colonel, I was a lieutenant colonel at the time, knew that I could sing, so he would always offer me, when we went to karaoke places, for me to sing. So I would go sing at karaoke places, and I would tell the karaoke guy, I say, look, put New York, New York on. And do you want the? I said, I don't need the words. I just grabbed the microphone and I went out there and started singing like Frank Sinatra, and so everybody's going Frank Sinatra, Frank Sinatra. So it was a really great thing. So I started. It kind of empowered me to say, I could do this. Mm-hmm. And then when I was a lieutenant colonel and commanding a battalion in Okinawa, I told my sergeant major, my senior enlisted guy, that at the Marine Corps ball, I want to sing. And he looked at me and said, Colonel, you can't do that. You're going to make a fool of yourself. I said, Sergeant Major, you have no trust in your colonel, so let me do it. So at the time, I told him to get it all ready with the DJ. At a certain time during the evening, I came out with a fedora, a black fedora, my Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel evening dress, which is really, really cool. And my Marines were looking at me. Hey, the colonel's out there, out of uniform. I grabbed the microphone. I instructed all my Marines who were in dress blues to come out on the dance floor and form a line, a chorus line. And we did New York, New York. And they did the kick, the high kick, like the Radio City Music Hall Rockettes. And that's when Frank Sings Frank was born. I realized that I had this skill. And growing up in New York, my parents played this music, Sinatra, Tony Bennett, Dean Martin, all this music, Nat King Cole. It was in me. And you know what? I told my wife, I said, this is what I want to do when I retire. It is so un-Marine-like or unusual, let's put it that way, for a Marine, because I was a colonel in the intelligence field. I could have worked anywhere I wanted. I could have worked for any three-letter agency. I had a very high top security clearance. I just pushed it all aside and said, this is what I want to do. So I've been doing it now for 13 years since I retired. Wonderful career doing this. I had no idea that it would be so popular. Where I live in Virginia Beach and Hampton Roads, I am an entertainer, a singer-entertainer, a Frank Sinatra tribute singer-entertainer. I'm not a impersonator. I don't have any hair, and I don't have blue eyes, but I know all this music. I know 400 songs, and at this place, at the World War II weekend, it's really interesting. They want to make it authentic, so I'm not allowed to sing any songs that were written past 1945.
Oh, really?
So I'm supposed to sing only songs that were written during the war years or prior to the war years. And I have about 65 songs in that category that I sing and bring to this show. And I've been coming here this is my 9th year. We had 1 year, but we didn't do it for COVID, 20. We didn't do it to 2020, but I've been coming here every year as a Frank Sinatra guy. So this is why I dress up like this. I wear vintage ties. I wear, a fedora, and I've got spectator shoes, and I sing. I sing with the women who are entertainers here too, portraying Bing Crosby and the Andrews sisters, which were very popular during the war. So it's really an amazing experience, and I hope that people who are watching this would take the time to come to World War II weekend in Reading, Pennsylvania, every June, the first Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of June every year. It's a wonderful experience.
Let's talk a little bit about the importance of honoring our World War II veterans and how every year we're unfortunately not seeing as many. Been doing this 9 years here, you said?
Yeah, and I've got to meet so many World War II veterans. Unfortunately, many of them are already passed since I started coming here. And the ones that do come here are very frail, and but they still have a story to tell. And I'm so grateful that they tell their stories, because it's a part of Americana, our history, that it's fading. And it's sad to say that a lot of young people today just don't understand the gravity of what these men and women did during World War II, because we wouldn't be here had they not succeeded in what they did. They truly sacrificed above and beyond. You read about, for example, the Marines hitting the beach in Iwo Jima, and how many waves of Marines just get shot down. D-Day, the waves of soldiers hitting that beach and just getting mowed down and whatnot, knowing that they were going to get out of those boats, and as soon as the ramp came down, they were going to get mowed down. And they were afraid, but they did their duty. And it's just a remarkable thing. It's hard to make any comparisons by today's standards. It's just really very difficult to do. But I love these men and women who come here. The Rosie the Riveter lady, she's here. She comes here. She's 90-something years old, and because the women who stayed behind in the country, our country, did their part. They actually worked in building aircraft and parachutes and equipment that went to the war effort. You got to come to World War II weekend to just experience what it's like. And sometimes the young people who come here for the first time, the light goes on. It's wow, especially these special veterans who come here and talk, and that you guys interview, which I appreciate you guys doing.
Thank you. Well, thanks for spending the time with us. You have a fascinating story. We do a lot of interviews, but we don't do interviews a lot with a guy that's got 30 plus years.
38 years, yeah.
That's quite impressive. But more importantly, thank you for your service to our country. It's a privilege to meet you. Fantastic.
It's great to be part of this program. Thank you so much.